In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw some cylindrical shapes, and it's all in my book, Ellen's Guide to Perspective, on Amazon. When drawing a pot, you have to consider the pros and cons of the viewpoint. So the eye level viewpoint is the most common, and here we see the top of the kettle and the front part of its base. At an eye level viewpoint, the ellipses are narrow, approaching lines, so the kettle looks flatter. And since eye level is in the middle in this case, the top and bottom ellipses look the same, making the image somewhat uninteresting. A worm's eye view is unusual, as if you're looking up at the kettle on a glass shelf. But we don't see the top or the knob, which are the most interesting part, just the base. How do you know whether these two bowls are too close together? Well, turn them into cylinders and see if the bases of the cylinders touch, and in this case they don't, so these bowls are fine. I'm going to talk about concave and convex shapes. So for concave shapes, think caving in, like a saucer or a steering wheel. In this case, the little ellipse is in front of the major axis of the big ellipse. Here, the little ellipse is in front of the major axis of the big ellipse. Now, for a convex shape like a lid, the little ellipse is behind the major axis of the big ellipse. This shows different views of a concave shape, which is this saucer. So on the side view, we can see that the base is quite low compared to the major axis of the ellipse. But from a more overhead view, this base becomes closer to the major axis of the ellipse, especially over here. Now for a convex shape, like the top of this jar, the knob is on top, and as we get more of an overhead view, it moves toward the center, still behind the major axis of the large ellipse from this viewpoint. An apple stem is in a hole. On a side view, the contour of the apple is flat and we don't see much of the stem. One side of the stem is light and the other side is shaded. As we get an increasingly overhead view of this apple stem, the top of the stem gets rounder, as does the depression and the contour of the apple. I love adding light shade patterns because I think it adds a lot to the picture. With the light coming from the left side of the depression is shaded, and it causes a shadow on the stem. Meanwhile, the stem, which is still shaded on the right, creates its own shadow that comes up from the depression, then turns outward at the surface. A light ray from the depression to the shadow it causes should be parallel to the light ray from the top of the stem to its shadow. The further overhead we go, the deeper into the depression we can see. So the stem is seen in the middle here, touching its shadow. To draw shapes where the cylinder is in the negative space, not part of the object, we can put the object in a box and then carve out the cylinder. For the birdhouse, I carved out half cylinders on both sides. See if you could draw this cup holder and this tape dispenser. To draw this elongated trash can, divide a box into 6 vertical units and then draw ellipses in 2 of the units so that they overlap in the middle unit. And these ellipses are horizontal, even though we can see the can from the side, because as always, the minor axis of the ellipse must be parallel to the axis of the form. Then draw the sides of the form where the ellipses touch the box and get rid of your construction lines, and then you have this form here, and put seams on both sides so that it looks three-dimensional. To wrap a label around a cylinder, draw a trapezoid around the lower ellipse with its sides converging toward a vanishing point on the axis of the cylinder. Draw these yellow lines between each letter of the word sauce, and once these lines are in the trapezoid, they converge toward the vanishing point. Once they hit the measuring line in the middle of the cylinder, they go vertically up, parallel to the sides of the cylinder. The letters of the word sauce follow the curve of the ellipse and are spaced so that they lie between each one of these magenta lines. Alternatively, you could divide the cylinder by first drawing a circle and dividing the circle into even parts, and then transferring those positions over to the cylinder so that the spaces on the sides are narrower than the spaces in the middle. And then you can write the word sauce in each one of these divisions following an ellipse. I'm now going to show you how to draw this cute tent. First, draw a box and find its center where the green diagonals cross. Then run lines through that center parallel to the sides, and where they hit the sides of the box, they head vertically up. These magenta poles become the peak of the arches that we're going to draw, and it stabilizes the arches. So here I drew in the arches so that they have a vertical axis. Then I drew the blue arches in the back, and they too peak at the top of these vertical magenta poles. I strengthened the lines in front so it's clear that the blue arches are in back. We end up with a box containing 4 arches. I shaded them to indicate that the magenta arches are in front. Draw the top and make sure the center of the top lies above the center of the base. If you have some sag in the sides, you'll also need to suggest that with this front line. Then finish shading the tent. In my next video, I'm going to talk about Van Gogh's perspective, which is often way off and sometimes spot on. So I think it's really interesting. And please remember to subscribe.